God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Young?
Here.
Newberry?
Here.
Browner?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Lees?
I'm here.
I entertain a motion for approval of our agenda.
So move. Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have a consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion approved. Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, so let's move on to our council and staff reports.
Sounds good. Iowa League was last week, and had a good session, or several good sessions. Actually, I think I got more out of the vendors than anything, actually. I mentioned, I think already last week, about Beaverdale, and so we'll follow up with that. I followed up with one of the HOA board members already, so we'll continue working on that. Water tower, I think I'll let Mike take that one.
Thanks.
It's ongoing. We're not ready for substantial completion at this point in time. There's a few critical things that we want to make sure that are done before substantial completion is on there. And as you see in the packet, they've included a new way of calculating or including those disincentives in there and tracking them, and they've actually signed off on those too. So, but they'd like to close it out sooner rather than later, but we're not there yet. Let's see, 2 updates back. I put on there about evaluation process. November 3rd is my date, start date. And I put Dan's on there that Kelly had provided me. Is that something you still want to use and go through? Or I think a little late in the game to probably change the process, but certainly open to doing that going forward. Otherwise, I'll be sending that out and try to get that back in a couple weeks. Does that work for everybody?
I'll be more than happy to give one.
Yeah, don't forget what I said.
You'll be the first one with it in.
And, mentioned it already, but Angie had put this information together. This is just a starter. We're going to add some additional categories to this document for all of our use, including things like estimated replacement date and some additional factors as well. But appreciate her putting that together. I know it's something the council wanted, and we'll continue to work on it and make it better. So that's all for tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Greg, if on that one, if a person could put like a condition of the vehicles or the thing and label them 1 through 10 or 1 through 5.
Yeah, there's several additional ones.
Give us a little bit. Okay.
Right.
Okay, Mike?
Just a reminder, the leaf pickup for bags starts October 15th and November 30th. We pick them up on Monday mornings. We got the salt hauled and in the dome. This is the most salt we've had in storage since we got to the new facility. Had a good year last year and was able to hold some back. Been going through town. We got about another day left out here on Mount Pleasant in the 100 blocks, and we'll have all the jetting in town done. Just an update on that. Our truck is still down. They have not located the gearbox or parts. It's costing us about $6,000 a week to get the jetting done, plus the 2 main brakes to vacuum it out. Just estimating, by the time I get all of this done, we may be somewhere around $40,000 or more by the time we're done that it's costing us because we don't have our own truck. We've had 2 demos in that have showed us how theirs worked. We have a recycling truck coming back. What it actually does is when you run the jetter line up to pull back, you set your vac tube in and suck it up into the waste tank. and there's a screen that takes the solids out, and after you do like 2 blocks worth, you have enough liquid in your tank. We won't have to go to hydrants and keep filling the truck with water to jet. We can reuse the brown water and not have to use as much water off of the hydrants. So they're bringing that back to demo and see how that works. It will save on time of shutting down, pulling out, going to hydrants and filling, because we'll have water in our tank and just keep hopping from manhole to manhole. It should save time and water that we won't have to pull off of a hydrant. We have not seen that demoed yet. They're coming back in October sometime, so hopefully that works out. The tower, just total confusion out there. New one won't run on its own, pumps kicking out. Set points we've been changing, been working with jet code on the controls and boomerang, and probably 20 or 25 emails a day. Apparently rattled enough chains. I got people showing up tomorrow to start addressing things again. We can't shut the south tower down until this one is functioning, because they have to redo the controls in the south, so the two will work in sequence. So it won't be substantially done until we get everything done at both places, and they're both online and running. So just found the light not working. They cut a conduit and buried it and didn't tell us. Found that, so they've hired a local contractor to bore a new line into the light. Noticed today there's 2 heaters hanging in there. There's no thermostats to the heaters. I have no way of turning them on and controlling them. There's a surge protector missing inside. Liant did not turn the gas on again because they didn't properly paint and insulate the line. I could go on and on and on. I spend a lot of hours every week chasing ends out there trying to get things done, so.
2 main things for substantial completion will be the controls in operation and working at both sites.
And the old meter pit out on Mount Pleasant.
The old meter pit out and heat. The rest of it is likely minor enough that.
The rest of that will be a punch list at the end, but we have not got to the point to, we're at the point that Troy's running it manually to circulate water in the tank so we don't lose our chlorine residual and have to dump about 500,000 gallons down the drain. So at least we're not wasting water. We're using out of it and then manually pumping in and shutting it down before we go home at night to keep everything going. But just a lot going on our part to get to where we're at that I'm not getting the cooperation out of them. They should be here doing this, working with Troy. I know they need us to help, but after today, I think I got some cooperation headed this way. It should be things the contractor should be taking care of and not us, but we're doing everything on our part and above to try and make it work. I will keep you informed of where we're at with that and when we can get it online. Other than that, that's about all I got.
So Mike, when they do get that operational, you know, the sync between the plant or the towers and stuff, will we do that for like a week before we sign off?
Oh, yeah.
Not just one or 2 times?
Yeah, meter pit out, I want at least a week of running, yeah. They thought they'd have the week of this one running by itself and it working so they could shut the south down, but we haven't even got that far yet, so.
Good job.
Thank you, Mike. Anything, Jesse?
I got 2 things. First thing is we got police officer opening. Now through October 21st, you can turn in your application here at City Hall or email it to me, and then our testing will be on November 12th. And then the second thing, I had Officer McCampbell go to DARE school to teach DARE in our local elementary school. I had an email back from the state instructor. He just wanted to congratulate Shane. He was the number 1 in his class. He was chosen by his peers to represent them at the end of the training, as well as sharing his final thoughts on the training. He did very well. We knew he would anyway, but I think he's going to be a very good officer to get into the schools and continue teaching DARE and interacting with the school and all that. So I was really glad to hear that from Terry from DARE, Iowa. So we'll get going with that here in the next couple months and have another graduation in the spring. That's all I have.
Thank you.
1,500.
Sean?
Just following up on some nuisances that notices have been sent out for on various issues between brush, dilapidated houses, and other various issues with our, going on in the city. On the fire side, I had some guys go over to Mount Pleasant to participate in some free training over the weekend. They had brought back some good information. It was a combination of grain bin rescue and then also interior fire attack simulator. And then Wednesday next week, we have the kindergarten coming up for tour up at the fire station for Fire Prevention Week, which starts on Sunday.
Okay, thank you.
Have we used the new truck yet?
Oh, yeah, we have.
How'd that go?
We had a little, we've had a couple calls we've gone out on it with. Fire alarms, smell of smokes, but last week we had a little issue at Borgie. It was not the trash compactor as was reported. It was something else, but it was still a fire. And both Burlington and us were able to make a good attack on it, save everything, and it's just cosmetic damage that's done. The truck's been running great. Only complaint I've heard is there's too many safety features on it, but that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Any other reports? Okay. If not, do we have any citizens? Oh, I'm sorry, I should go to our council. Kathy?
Just thank you for the opportunity to attend the Iowa Leagues. I learned quite a bit. Thank you.
Andy?
Mike, you had mentioned the other day on the sewer jetting, you only had 2 issues. Are you still just at 2 issues?
3. We've had one more. So the only calls to City Hall has just been 3.
Okay.
And we've serviced roughly, I asked Katie, 1,200 properties. Like I said, I'm about done in town. I'll be
That's
gone.
a lot less than normal, right?
Yeah.
Normally a dozen?
Yeah, I don't know, about a dozen. What, Katie, you remember how many's on the list?
Probably maybe a dozen.
Maybe a dozen, but they don't happen every year either,
Right.
so. But no, it's went smoother this year.
Okay. And then seriously, thank you for this list. To say it out loud, I asked for this for 2 years and didn't get it, so this is good.
I'm not sure why you haven't got it, because I've been filling that out for 3 or 4
Yeah.
years.
Well, I appreciate it, actually getting it. So this is a great start and yeah, kind of a general replacement schedule, even just to have a year in mind, even though we know it'll adjust, would be good. That's all I would need to add to.
We could start with the sewer, just the replacement date on that was last May.
Start in the past, work forward, understand. So that's it. Thank you.
John?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Therese?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, just a couple things. I want to echo the thanks that Kathy said to the opportunity to attend the Iowa League of Cities Conference was insightful and informative. The sessions were good, and believe it or not, I went to a vendor fair and I didn't get to spend enough time with the vendors. That was a disappointment often, that you spend too much time there, and I can't wait to be done with it. So the ones I spoke with just was a whole different perspective, just something I've not been exposed to. So thank you, and hopefully a few of these things we'll be able to follow up on and put into place what I learned here the next year or so with the city council, that being on mall redevelopment, solar options, disaster volunteer, understanding with what volunteers do in disasters. And Sean, that's what prompted me to reach out to you. It's like, get off the stick on that. And finally, introducing culture and art to public spaces. So just 3 of the areas that I got to spend some time in, got some perspective on, and made the trip worthwhile. So thank you. Also wanted to let you know, Mike, I've gotten at least 3 positive comments regarding that leaf collection area. So thank you. It was appreciated, and their observation was it was being utilized properly. So you may have a different opinion, but that's what the people I spoke with
The
said.
first weekend, it has been. I'm not saying there's no violators, but I have no garbage and tires and nothing like that at this point, so.
Yeah, on that note, I believe we're still working on getting different signs out there,
I
right?
just, actually, I just got on my phone now, I finally got estimates in on to fence the facility and the gates, to do the whole facility. What was there was 80-some thousand, $102,000 to fence the whole property with the sliding gates in front and rear, but I asked them for just sliding gates and short fences to go from the island curb over to the grass. That way, if somebody wanted to get in, they'd have to drive around everything, the railroad tracks and ditch, but those quotes come in, I got a $12,000, $25,000 if we put a card reader so we can pull up and swipe a card and it'll open, but if we just do sliding gates with a chain and a padlock, $12,000 and $14,000 is what I got coming in just to gate that. And then, I don't know, the discussion was to just have an officer close it at a certain time after we leave, to leave it open. That way it's not open all night.
What about a camera?
Those are kind of the quotes coming in. I don't know where we stand with that, if we're still wanting to do that or not, but
I didn't know for sure. I didn't think we were going to do that.
I was asked what it costs and get quotes, so
Yeah.
that's why I did it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we are or aren't, I just passing on what prices I'm getting.
And the signs have been ordered.
What's that?
The signs have been ordered?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. We'll be replacing the original signs there and changing them, bigger writing.
So what about the camera? Because if we're
The
trying to
one camera is in
look at-
place on the brush pile, but it's not in place on the other one. It's $1,400, I believe, is the price. It's back ordered if we want to put the same one in
Are we able to see the license plates clearly?
on the brush pile, not on the grass pile. We don't have anything on that one yet. We just have the one camera out there.
Either we wait for the back order or we have Brad look for another one.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out which way to go.
All right,
Last thing, that we have a listening session, I guess, on October 13th from 2 to 3 p.m. that the elected officials are invited to. It's on housing. It's, I'm curious who's planning on jumping in on that, and are we going to have any base information to talk from, or is it all just off the cuff, or?
I put it on my calendar, but
So,
yeah, like you, I wasn't sure. I actually wasn't sure, am I listening to them speak or are they listening to us speak?
I took it that they're looking for our input.
Okay.
Is that, can you,
Not any more than an email. It wasn't discussed at the committee, but, so this is my understanding. I think they're just reaching out with large employer and elected or appointed officials and looking for input on housing in general in the community. That's my understanding.
okay. That's how I read it too. One session is for large employers and the other session's elected officials. All right, okay, well, I'll give my 2 cents worth. Okay, thank you, that's all I had, Ron.
One quick follow-up? On the economic development and the mall redevelopment piece, I have a conference call set up with the presenter, actually on that. My plan is to have him attend a council session or work session and basically present the same information. I think it might be useful to have that discussion as a body here, so, a conversation. I believe it's next week.
That he's going to present to us? or-
I'm going to I have a conference call set up.
Gotcha. I would just, I assume that's at Terry McClure, right?
Terry Luke.
Okay, super. If he's going to present to us, which would be great, if he can make a visit here and give us 2 cents with, because our setup here is a little different than like the Fort Dodge situation. He briefed in a lot. So I'd love to have him kind of give his world of knowledge and input on how to address that, so, too. So, thank you, that's a great idea, Greg.
Appreciate it.
Oh, one final thought, Greg. Can you set up a meeting with Alliant with the solar?
Oh, sure. And I believe the mayor attended a solar session as well.
I think there were 3 of us in that solar session. Yeah, it was quite good. And that particular presenter also indicated that she would be willing to give us a presentation too. So I mean, we could go that direction also.
I think it'd probably get different vendors and different
Yes.
ideas.
Yes. Yeah, and I guess I could echo both of you on the thanks for being able to attend this conference. I went and saw the vendors very early on, so I've actually spent a little more time with them than maybe I missed a session that way because of it. But, I'm interested, of course, in the solar, I'm interested in the mall development, and then I'm also interested in our emergency management if we'd have a disaster. So those are 3 areas that I intend to continue keeping my interest up in it, presenting information so that the whole council gets an opportunity to hear that information. So, let's go on to any citizens' inquiries, and as it says here on the new line that we have on this, it says that I'm opening the floor to citizen inquiries on items that are listed on this agenda. So that would be our 3 items of either the professional service agreement with Shive Hattery, or the second reading of the ordinance amending the city code, or then, since you don't have any information on the water rates, we could have somebody talk about that, but then I will have another citizen inquiry after we do our new business. Do we have any citizens inquiries here? No, okay. With that, then I'll move on to new business. I want to consider professional services agreement with Shive Hattery Engineering to conduct a force main study. And I would entertain a motion to approve that.
So move.
Support.
Motion and support. Discussion?
Yes, Your Honor. We have Shive Hattery here tonight. I thought it would be a good idea for introductions. Just a real brief run-through. I think we talked through this pretty thoroughly during the budget process as well, but thought maybe we'd hit on some of the highlights, but just an opportunity to meet Shive Hattery as well, and the folks we're going to be working with. And interestingly enough, it was either Mike or Rod thought back in the 80s that Shive had actually put this together, and you've apparently found the documentation as well from that work in the 80s. So with that, would you mind coming up and introducing yourselves, and then just a brief introduction into the force main study, and we'll go from there?
Thank you. Into the microphone?
Yeah, please. Feel free to have a seat.
Or can you, I guess it's better to sit.
No, you're good.
Thank you so much for having us tonight. My name is Tammy Wilcox, and I'm a civil engineer with Shive Hattery, and I've worked at Shive Hattery since 2001, and I focus primarily on water and wastewater projects. So water mains, wastewater sewers, force mains, and then also treatment plants, water towers, and are all my favorite kinds of projects. And I also love working with cities, my favorite kinds of things. And I've worked with City of Eldridge on their wastewater treatment plant upgrade. I've worked with City of Earlham, and I did a big force main project with the City of Comanche back in 2010. So these are just a very brief history of some of my big projects. And and also I wanted to let you know I grew up in Keokuk, so from the area, and I have some very fond memories of visiting your mall. One of my favorite Saturdays back then. So I'm going to let Shane introduce himself, and then I'll talk a little bit about our proposal.
Good evening. I'm Shane Euler with, I'm the water wastewater group leader with Shive Hattery. Have, I hate to admit it, but well over 20 years experience. Focused on water wastewater my whole career. And I've been with Shive Hattery since 2013, so approaching my 10-year with them. Really good company. We're an Iowa-based company. A lot of talented professional staff. And but really, like Tammy had mentioned, our passion is to team and collaborate with cities and address infrastructure projects. So with that, I will hand it back over to Tammy.
Thank you.
We did bring a little packet, has our proposal in it, and a little bit.
Start right there. Those, yeah.
All of them?
No.
Oh, just, okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for the proposal, so first, describe our understanding of the project. The city has a 24-inch long force main. It's about 2 miles long, and it was installed in 1983. And the plans, the construction plans were designed by Shive Hattery. And we did locate those plans in our electronic database storage area. So I have those plans. They will come in very handy as we work through this project. And talking with Greg, so we've developed, our approach to the project is, first of all, we want to understand the condition as well we can of the existing force main and define the project based on that. And so in our first steps in the project will be to gather information, which a big thanks to Mike. Mike met us at 4 o'clock this afternoon and gave us a tour of your facilities. So we have a great kickstart on understanding your facilities and starting to define that project. So thanks, Mike. Yeah. And so, and then the proposal does have another option. So our base fee and our base scope has more an anecdotal assessment of the condition of the force main based on Mike and Rod's experience with their breaks and experience they've had with the force main through other projects. So we can just try to assess that, and also based on the age of the pipe and also the air relief valves are one spot where we have access to the pipe. So just anecdotally defining the condition of the pipe. Now, there is scope item number 8 also offers to go more in depth and to actually excavate, expose the pipe, and do some non-destructive testing from the exterior to check the thickness of the pipe. We're thinking 4 locations, and we would pick those strategically based off of the data we have from the construction documents that we found. So that is an option depending on how much information and how much money you want to spend understanding the condition of the existing line. From there, once we define the project, then we have a lot of ideas in our brain of ways to solve this problem for you. And so we were thinking initially we'll brainstorm 8 to 12 options and then vet those options with Mike and Greg and Rod, and with keeping the city goals in mind and just talking on a very high level, benefits, negatives of those 8 to 12 options, and then narrow that down to 1 to 2 options that we think are in line with the city's goals and have a great chance of being successful, and then looking at those more in depth, looking at the conceptual layout, a conceptual cost opinion, for a high level of cost and life cycle costs and cost to benefit ratio for those 2 options, and then documenting that in a report. And then that report could be used for the facility plan, which is the first step with the Iowa DNR for wastewater projects. And also, a facility plan is important in going after funding. And our report, the report will address funding options. Shane and I have experience with CDBG and USDA and SRF funding, and I'm working on an ARPA-funded project with another city in Iowa right now. So we can help you with those services as well. So any questions for us?
What type of funding is these other cities getting?
CDBG, if depending on the low to moderate income ratio, that you can get a grant. And we've worked with cities that have gotten community block development grants. Very, very common is the state revolving loan fund. That is a loan, but a very low interest loan, and you can pay it back over 20 or 30 years, depending on certain factors. The USDA also, based on your population, I think you would qualify. They have grants and loans, so that's another option to look into. And then the ARPA funding, that is the recovery and,
The additional infrastructure bill.
yes.
Right.
So those are the four that have worked with the most.
And those would all be money we'd go after the study's done, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Identified in the plan, or some of the options for funding would be identified in the plan. I think I guess from my perspective, the plan would be to do the initial assessment, and if we find that you need more information, because I had asked for the additional scope of services as well to see if we needed to drill down deeper to, as part of that assessment period or process, and what it would take to do so. And maybe there's some other ideas, but I guess to start off with the initial scope, and then if we need to expand that, return and come back with a little bit more concrete information. If we feel like we need more information than we're getting from the initial assessment.
So what'll drive that decision? The first steps 1 through 7 is the $32,000, and then the
Well,
option 8 is the other 70.
Really, the initial scope is where they're taking a look at in evaluating the current system, the infrastructure that's in place, the breaks, the history, information that and knowledge that the Public Works Department has, and for example, previous breaks and the thickness of the wall of the.
And that Thursday, the only air relief we got broke, and we had to get a manhole, tear that down and repair it, or we wouldn't even have an air relief, so, yeah.
So thickness of the pipe from previous work as well. But so take all of that information, and if we feel like we need to take an additional step, 4 steps, bring that back. It's a rather significant cost. You can do, it wasn't sonar, it was.
Ultrasonic.
Ultrasonic, thank you. I couldn't think of the word. To determine the width of the pipe, but not wanting to have to open it up.
So really, the first, for the 32,000 is just gathering information that we're gonna give you, and you're just looking, but you're really not.
No, it's coming up with a plan of, basically a plan of attack, I guess, from my perspective, on how to approach, what's the condition of the 24-inch force main pipe?
How do we know that? If you're not digging into it or tapping into it, or?
We have a lot of history and knowledge with
History
staff.
and thickness where breaks
designs.
were, and where we drilled into it, and it's been fine to tap on, like the new south lift, it was fine there. The problem is air. Whenever there's air left in there, that's what eats the pipe. And those air points, seeing how they have the original plans, they know where the original air reliefs are, and when it was built, it should have been in them. So we can go so many feet from air reliefs, find where the thin is and where it gets back to thick, and know how much, maybe just repairs. Maybe it's not a whole replacement of this line. We don't know until we get to that point. But they got to know our flows and rains and all that stuff. I mean, we got a lot of information to pass back and forth to come up with their study.
Yeah, but my question is, how do we know that if we're not digging into it and taking a sample of that? Where the air thing is?
We will eventually have to probably do that.
Yeah.
They have done it before in several different locations and have information from those locations.
And where the air reliefs are, there's exposed to part of the pipe. They could get in those air reliefs and probably do that same test too, couldn't you?
That's a possibility. I looked in those today. I would have to talk with the testing agency if there's enough room in there for them to get their equipment on the pipe in there. But that is a possibility, yes.
So do you have like a machine that we can dig down and take an x-ray of the pipe that, you know?
We do not. If we want to do the non-destructive testing of the pipe, then we would need, the city or Shive Hattery would hire a an excavator to excavate down to the force main and expose probably a 3-foot width of the pipe and it all the way around. And then there is a non-destructive testing firm, and they would contract also. That's not a service that Shive Hattery offers. Our service from that aspect would be to write the documents to get quotes from contractors that can do that non-destructive testing. So what is in our proposal for $32,000 would be to define the project, brainstorm 8 to 12 options, and work with the city to narrow those down to 1 to 2 options, and then conceptually lay out those 2 ideas and look at costs and benefits and life cycle costs, and then ultimately recommend a plan for the force main.
I have a couple questions. Number one, just about your firm. How large of a firm is this? How many employees?
We have around approximately 400 employees, and our main offices are in Iowa: Bettendorf, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, and then we have been expanding recently. We have a Chicago office, Omaha, Lincoln, Madison, St. Louis, and we have 75 civil engineers. I know that we were just talking about that today. And we have architects, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, landscape architects. So Shane and I specialize in water and wastewater, but we have people that specialize in a lot of different things. And so I guess, so we can help you with a lot of things as well into the future, but Shane and I specialize on water and wastewater.
Sounds like between you two, you've got 40-plus years of experience. How many force main studies have you each done?
I don't know the exact number, but I'm well over a dozen.
Okay.
And I would probably say around 6, half a dozen.
Okay. Has there ever been, in any of those studies, one done with a similar age force main done back in the early 80s where it has not been recommended that it needs replaced at this time?
There's been sections that will get, and it depends on the pipe material and a host of other factors, but there are conditions where sections of the pipe you'll get more than 40 or 50 years worth of life, but some sections, especially where, like Mike was saying, where air can grab, so there's corrosive gas that builds up in the sewer that gets trapped, and then that starts corroding that crown at top of the pipe. So there's a host of factors there, but there is a chance, based on the information that we know now, that there's sections of pipe that's good, and so maybe it's not the full 11,000 feet, but it's a plan of how to do it in phases, if you will.
So you think there's some chance that this could come back with, you don't need to replace this entire force main?
There's some chance.
Yes.
Okay.
We talked about lining during the budget process as well as a interim solution, or for a portion of it as well. I mean, decreasing the size of the pipe internally, but we are going to need to study our existing flows and any potential future flows that we have, all of those factors we want to take into consideration.
And that's part of our study,
Right.
is to look at the lift stations, the pumps, the hydraulics of the whole thing. So there's a section of the pipeline that carries all the flow to the plant. And so looking at the west lift station right now, that's the main one that goes through the whole line in the south, and how those hydraulics will work out. That's part of the study that's in our scope to kind of get a handle on it.
if
And
we
like this,
go,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
if we go with option 2, and some of this is excavated up and checked, what does that mean at that point in time for the city? Like, how does that kept flowing while we're doing that?
They're not breaking.
That's that testing where they
Breaking it.
clean up.
They're just-
You're only doing the ultrasonic, is that what you said? You're not,
Yes.
okay. Okay.
I would mention there is some risk with that because it's excavating the pipe.
Right.
You gotta clean the pipe, dirt, things like that. So while we're in there, there's a chance,
Okay.
that there could be a break. And then dealing with that break.
And what's your recommendation, knowing what you know right now at this moment? Should we go option 1 and that's good enough, or you think we need to do option 2?
I think we should just start with option 1 and we will collect all the data we can and we'll summarize it. And that's my recommendation, is to start there
Does
and
the
not
price-
do option 2 at this point.
Does the price change of option 2 if we decide to do it once option 1 is completed? Is there a new administration fee on top? Okay.
No.
Okay. Excellent, thank you.
I've worked with Tri-Hattery most recently on street project, not water and sewer. But had very good experience. Have not worked with you folks, but I have worked with others in their office and had a good experience here most recently. So. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to engage with a firm that's got a good reputation in the state of Iowa, and for council and for staff to work with them and to move forward, I guess.
What is your turnaround time? When will we start to get these answers back?
Well, we can start on it right away, and we did not put a schedule in there.
I think one of the things is we'll work with Greg, Mike, and Rod to kind of see what the reasonable timeframe to collect data and get that in, and then define a schedule. But it's not months.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote on the proposal, which...
Option 1, option 2.
Option 1.
Option 1. Roll call.
Crowner,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Newberry.
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Yep. Thanks.
Appreciate you coming down and introducing yourselves. Look forward to working with you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for the comment.
It's always nice to have a face with a
It is.
thing. It is. Yeah. It is. Appreciate it.
We're the same way.
Yeah.
You guys are free too, if you want to go, you can go. You don't.
If it's all right, we'll excuse ourselves and
Go on. You bet.
Yes.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, our second item in new business is to consider our second reading of the ordinance amending the city code related to snow removal and snow emergencies. Entertain a motion for this second reading.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion and support. Discussion?
Well, I see that we're modifying this thing a little bit.
Page 4 has the changes. Page 4 has the suggested changes based on last week's discussion.
And I know we talked about this last week.
Or last
Yeah.
meeting.
And I guess I'm not totally against it, but on the other hand, Mike had said last week that you usually do this area first, right?
No, this is the last area. That's why I said, these changes aren't really changes, because when I do curb to curb, I go straight down Broadway. We don't come back in till 3 AM or 4 AM. this is considered off-street parking. They're not on the street, they're parking off the side of the street. So that is after the snow is quit. Now, during the day, if I'm plowing coming up down and there's a patch with no cars, we'll swing in and knock the windrow off in between cars, but that's after we get all the streets and stuff done. We come up and clean that the next morning, and then the next morning we haul snow away if we need to haul it away, so. It's really not changing anything with my pattern of what I'm doing. It's just clarifying that that is off-street parking, and you're okay to park there until midnight, but be off there, so when I come in early in the morning, we can clean it up.
This change codifies what we're already doing.
Yeah,
You can
it's-
leave it out. That's how our operations currently run, or you can codify it so that it's clear, perhaps to the public, in the downtown business district, how things will operate. But that's simply what it's doing, is codifying current operations.
Just one note, because it does really change the meaning of this. I think that 12 PM is supposed to be 12 AM.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's supposed to be changed for the next reading.
Okay.
No further discussion.
Just, yeah, a minute.
All right.
I'm happy with this new Section 8. This solves this issue that I was worried about. And thanks for taking time to talk to me about it this week. I have a couple small issues that this doesn't solve. But I think they are to the point where they're things that won't really come up, and that everybody knows, hey, we just, one of them was the church, the Catholic church over here, and how much parking happens on Spring Street and that surrounding area on Saturday nights. I think that's an issue, but I'm not sure if we need to put it in code, and we all know that, hey, there's gonna be cars there for an hour, and it's not typically when Mike's doing it anyway. So there's some small things like that aren't perfect, but I think this answers the biggest one, handling parking out here during the day.
But I don't understand why we have to have that.
Because otherwise
If
you
it's-
shut down all of these businesses at every snow emergency.
But he says it doesn't change it anyway, because
What it's doing is clarifying. People think I'm going curb to curb up here when the snow's coming down, and I'm not. That's off-street parking. It's the same over at the church on Millville. They have their own off-street parking there. We don't even clean that up. They clean that along the street themselves. All we do is go down to 2 lanes of traffic. So in a snow emergency, I'm cleaning curb to curb, but where the curb dives in for off-street parking, that's not what we're doing in the snow emergency. That's what we come up and do at 3, 4 in the morning and get started when everybody's gone. So it's just letting them know that if I call a snow emergency, it's not that you can't come up and have a sandwich and a beer or get your hair cut or go to the post office or whatever, but by midnight, just have them move so that that's when I'll come up to clean this up. If we don't have this in, it's like telling people, get off of Broadway. You can't go to the Broadway or anything else, and you're just kind of shutting the businesses down too. When I technically is not the scope of what I'm doing at the beginning of the storm.
I see that we're telling all the residents, hey, get off the street.
Because they don't have off-street parking. They're parking on the street.
Well, we have parking in the back here for these. For
I
most
don't.
of them. Yeah, you do, couple, 3.
We've got 20 employees in 2 spots.
To me, it's a limited issue in a limited area, because commercial and residential, technically, you're supposed to have off-site parking. In all of our traditional, or commercial districts have off-site parking. This is a bit of a different situation where in your downtown, it's just whether, or a matter of whether you just want to keep it in your operations manual, or if you want to codify it to make it clearer to the public. These are our parking stalls to maintain down here. We just don't typically do it until the middle of the night, early morning, when nobody's out here, and at the end of everything else, last thing on the list. But it is ours to maintain. The others are not, like in front of the church.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. We'll take a roll call on this one, please.
Johnson?
Aye.
Lees?
Aye.
Young?
Aye.
Newberry?
Aye.
Crowner?
Aye.
We passed the second reading then. Our last item on here is discussion of changes to the water rates, which I gather we don't have to have a motion for, right?
No, just a simple discussion. I just wanted to start having this conversation. Katie, Kelly, been working on this, and myself, as you all know, during the budget process, or, excuse me, not during, but following the completion of the budget process, we received notice of a 12% increase in rates. And what we talked about at that time is coming back with the rates subsequent to that, and to account for that increase. We can't simply absorb it. We have loan obligations, et cetera, that we need to ensure that we maintain and not just traditional operations. What we also discussed, or just, I guess, briefly discussed at the time, was perhaps coming back with a slightly different structure, trying to limit the impact on the residential user that doesn't use much water, and focusing rates a little higher on the high-end user, where traditionally we have most of our issues. So what you have, I guess, before you tonight is the current rate structure. It shows the 12% rate increase on there as well. A proposed rate structure that does what I just mentioned, and places a smaller burden on the residential user, and then steadily increases. Now, there's probably 100 or more different ways you can do this structure, and if you choose to put more on the low-end user, then that would affect the above rates. And I can show you some examples too. Katie's put this together such that I can swap out those letters in blue just to kind of give you an idea. And I have one example that I had done earlier in front of me, but the last item is a separate item, but similar with our sewer connections. This would add a fee for additional water connections that we don't currently have, which I think is appropriate. Apartments is one example. And we do that with sewer connections, but we haven't done that for some reason with water connections. It doesn't generate a lot of revenue, but I think it's appropriate when folks are having additional connections. That said, we didn't try to, at this point in time, and we can certainly add to this, we didn't add a capital fee like we have with sewer, $1. That is certainly another option as well. We tried to capture the 12% rate increase. It allows us to fund our current loan obligations and run operations as we budgeted. And as you see, we didn't overshoot the number. We tried to come in right at the pretty close to the 12% increase.
That additional water connection fee, $10 per what? How is that charged?
Per connection.
Per year, per gallon, per
month?
Currently, we charge that for sewer. It's per month.
Per month.
per month? Okay, so $10 flat per month for an extra connection per
Just
each
a
connection.
number thrown out there, the $10, but.
Okay, I understand. Just want to know what it was.
So it is per connection per month? That's,
For additional connection.
It's exactly what we do with sewer.
okay.
Greg, do you have a breakdown on like the number of people that are in, under the proposed, under step 1 and step 2 and step 3? Do you have the amount of?
Well, let's see, we did it a little bit differently earlier. Katie does have, attaches a rather large spreadsheet here. I broke it out a little bit differently. For example, a 3,000 gallon user would see about a 34-cent increase. 12.74 for 10,000 gallons, and 206 for 100,000 gallons and over. Let's see, I think I've got this set up by I prefer Mac.
So, Greg,
I was just going to see if I could get a quick number on the,
like Mount Pleasant, if their water rate, if they were using 500,000 gallons, how does this compare to that? Or
you say that again?
Keokuk? Well, to our new proposed, $16. How would we compare to their usage? Because it's a drawing point for business, they have to use
Right.
water.
Well, I didn't hear the first part.
How would the
What was
water
rate?
rates compare to the other cities?
The cities nearby.
To the
Oh,
cities
We
nearby?
didn't do a comparison. We have a 12% increase that we received from Burlington that we need to capture. We weren't able to do that. We didn't
I
compare it
understand
to other
that.
cities.
But there's a million ways we can do this.
Right.
And I don't want to,
Right,
I don't want to make it so that we don't have
right.
business coming in and,
Seeing that our water rates are
or
unreasonable
twice,
in comparison
or whatever.
Right.
To the next
Over
city.
here, based on the user, that's what I was trying to identify earlier. The low-end user scene, and we don't actually have, on average, the top two tiers. Occasionally, we have those, but Katie was saying that we don't actually have anybody on average that uses that.
And when you say top two tiers, you're talking about someone who uses over 500,000 gallons and 1 million gallons?
Yes.
So you have probably 0 customers
Right.
that,
So we have two
Okay.
customers at the high end.
At the-
And as I just dropped down to the end of the page with the current rate structure, the hospital and Borgie would be your two high-end users, which is the second column on the right there. They'll see a higher increase, but they're also, our higher-end users are also where we typically see more issues. But you'll see it dramatically drops down for users subsequent to that, depending on their usage. We can just pick one, I don't know. Katie, what's a good number, 30,000 for a small business?
Oh, gosh. There's such a range.
Putting you on the spot,
Yeah, there's such a range, just so,
but, so,
I'd say-
which is a significant amount. They'd see a $57, $58 increase.
A month?
Yes.
How about
Now,
our biggest customer?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
How about our biggest customer?
That was the last two on the list there.
okay.
22 and 23, or 24,
2,400 a month?
and 2217 at the very high end. And so,
I'm sorry, could you go back to that for half a second?
Sure.
What's the total they're paying now a month? 12,000 something? I don't know which column I'm supposed to be looking at.
the last light peach one where it says totals as are current. Okay, right there.
So the 9,755 and the 10,400.
Yeah, I think so, I can't quite read it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
certainly. I can, so for example, I took, as a little bit different, or were you putting more onerous on the residential? I did an example of $40, and then I just did the 1271 from our current rate structure on down the board, and that gets you close to where you need to be as well. And so they're not, and just stuck with the 1271, and it gets you within you're just over by $154. But by doing that, you're putting the emphasis on the low-end user. So, and I can split that difference, but what we talked about earlier on in the year was trying to limit that amount on the low-end user, and that's what this does. And obviously, there's 100 different ways we can do this, but it depends. And I guess what I need is some direction on how to affect. Let's see. That low-end user, I need to know if we've got room to go there, and if I adjust that up, that can reduce those rates on the additional steps that we have in place there. So if I take that up to $35, for example, and drop the other rates down, obviously that's something we can do, but it'll affect the low-end user. So
How many users are on the low end, Greg? How many users are there?
Say under 10,000.
Like
3,000 and below?
I'd say several, probably most of
Like, what percent of the total?
75 to 80.
75 to 80% of the total number of users are in that 3,000 or below usage.
Or under?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I did a rough count on these pages. I printed out the whole spreadsheet. And I would say there's probably about 1,300 of them on here, just looking through it rather quickly.
So we have a total of about 1,300 users, and of those 800 are 3,000 and below, yeah. And with the 3,000 and below, what my concern with those is there's a lot of times you use below 2,000, below 3,000, like 2,000 gallons, and you still pay the same rate as if you got 3,000 gallons of water.
But there is a cost to provide the service.
You betcha, yeah, I'm not saying lowered, I'm just saying,
Right.
hey, when we talk about the low-volume users are paying a higher rate, yeah, they really are, because if they conserve it, they still are going to pay that minimum fee.
And our current rate structure, I guess in my mind, doesn't encourage conservation with the higher end users.
Right, it discourages, actually. Well, not discourages.
Can I
but it gets-
clarify one piece of math? I'm sure this is not what this is. The 0 to 3,000 gallon person is not paying that rate per 1,000 gallons. That's their total, is the 3016 current?
Yes.
For 3,000 gallons?
Their base.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay, good.
And if they consume 2,100 gallons,
Still
they're
the
still paying
3016.
$30.
I'm with you. It's not $90 and whatever. It's-
Correct, no, no,
Yeah.
no.
Right.
Okay.
So per 1,000 gallons, the sewer rate is increased or decreased too, correct? It's per gallon?
It's per 1,000 gallons, and it stays the same.
Yeah, but,
The sewer rate isn't changing. This is just the
no,
water.
no, I understand that, but we're charged per what we use.
You have a connection charge with your sewer, and then it's per 1,000 gallons. And that doesn't, if you use 3,000 gallons, that rate per 1,000 stays the same. If you use 500,000 gallons, that per
That
1,000
rate.
rate stays the same.
I don't know if you recall, but at one point in time, we had, how many steps did we have early on? I don't know.
There was a
John,
bunch.
we had a
That's why-
ton of different steps, which to me just doesn't make, one, it's a complicated factor for water billing as well, but that rate structure went out a significant number of steps, and I hesitated to go too far on that, and went to 10,000 and 100,000 seemed to be good breaks. Well, 3,000, 10,000, and 100,000 seem to be pretty good breaks.
Well, it's my opinion that Burlington gave us a 12% increase, and they didn't care whether we were using 1,000 gallons or 500,000 gallons, okay? It was a 12% increase. And I think the ones that's using 3,000 gallons should share some of that cost just the same as the person that's using 500,000. As painful as that is to say, it's, what's fair about that is we're still getting the 12% increase, and I hate to see.
We can simply apply a 12% rate increase across the board for each category to recover the revenue we need, but that wasn't the discussion that we had.
12% per category, it would be.
Well, just using the current structure, for example, you could just simply do a 12% increase on each rate you'd get to the same revenue.
I understand that, but let's just throw me a figure out there for step 1 and step 4 at the.
Well, what, 10% would be a little over $3. So what, let's just say, if I did 33 there, and there's all kinds of ways we can do this here, but.
Well, for example, on the lowest rate, instead of being 30.16, it'd be 34.16. That's an increase of 12%. And I can do the upper ones for you, too, if you want.
But
I guess what I'd like the council to do at this point is just give Greg an idea of whether you would, you've given your opinion on that. I'd like to have the other 4 council members say what they would like to have Greg go towards. Whether you want to do it just as a 12% on each category, or whether you want to continue to look at the lower rate or not.
real quick, Your Honor, that $33, I just wanted to point out, was about $284 per month.
284.
At $33. So, thank you. I just need a direction on, I guess, what route you prefer to go, because, and then we can make it fit. I can do a simple across-the-board increase at 12%, and we can move forward. But if we want to do what we talked about and try to affect the lower end a little bit less, this is for one example of how we can do that.
That would be my choice.
I have a question, Greg. Didn't we just reduce the rates here sometime here in May or June?
Without knowing about
Okay,
the
we
12%
reduced the rate,
increase.
so that's why we're at the $30.16.
Well, we
And-
didn't do an increase that we were going to do.
Well, I'm
Right.
just trying to get the timing right in my head,
Yeah.
because our water bill from the spring was for the below
we did a
3,000 was $33.16. And that was 1 month when we used 2,110 gallons. And so I'm like, why were we at 33.16 in May? But then on here, we're saying we were at $30.16, and I
The
think
new
we
rates.
implemented a decrease.
Yes.
On
And-
that base, that first.
Based on the
3,000 gallons.
budget process that we had all just
Talked
gone
about,
through,
yeah.
And, and offsetting some of those other costs. And then at the end of the budget process, we were hit with that rate increase that nobody
So,
Was
planned on.
sort of, I mean, the details do matter here. We put in a 3 or 4 step process of raising rates, and then we paid some of that off with COVID and backed it back down a little bit, but it was still, and some of that predates even you being here, but, I mean, we put in 3 or 4 increases and then backed one off.
Yeah.
To pay for infrastructure.
Yeah, I completely understand, but,
Right.
I mean, we just got we didn't just decrease rates, we just didn't raise quite as much as we said we were going to.
Okay. Thank
We-
you.
We raised it, we kept it at a sufficient amount to cover our
with you.
debt.
Yeah.
But we're somewhere, we decreased the rate or something, okay.
Yeah.
And my thought is, well, if we just go back to that rate, which is about 10%, the $33.16 for our low users, the 0 to 3,000, and do the math on how that comes out.
So
And
roughly,
then,
that was that amount.
what you
that
were
I-
saying, yeah.
Right.
In other words, it's what the residents were used to paying. And we got a little holiday, or got a lower rate for a short period of time.
And at that rate, we
$3.
wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. We just go back to the.
Kinda, yeah. But, and my other is, I'm not a big proponent of having 6 different categories of rate payers.
Last
It'd be
two-
nice if we'd have fewer ones.
The last two, we don't,
Don't really
Katie
know.
was saying that we don't average occasionally go over, but on average, we don't have those two categories. But if we do, depending on our categories, that's why, I mean, we left them in. They're in our current rate structure as well. But yeah, I mean, so that would be obviously a pretty basic, it'd be a $3 increase.
Yeah.
For the low-end user.
Back to kind of where we were.
And then I can tweak those other steps to get down, I mean, down to the, well, I'm going to put this one back here. I've played with it too much. 1450. So, I mean, just changing the low-end user brings you up to 133. So, I mean, you're not dramatically increasing your revenue by doing that. But that's certainly an option. And we'd only be able to take those other categories down a small amount. So, to me, I just need to know, do we do the 12% across the board and just, it is what it is, and just continue that way? Or did you want to stick with that original thought of affecting the low-end user less?
Tracy, you want to comment? You haven't said anything for a bit.
Well, I'm absorbing it because I'm a single senior citizen, and so, you know, what you're proposing is if we stayed with what you have proposed, and my granddaughter moved into me, well, now I have a $150 water bill, and I'm like, holy moly. And we're using like 5,000 gallons. I'm like, okay, she's not working, but I'm on Social Security. I mean, that's enormous, and I really don't want to go back to work ever again. Seriously. So I would like to see on your proposed, I would like to see less steps. I want to know how many people are in each step, how many users are in each step. And then if you can go back to what we were before and then show me the 12% increase so I can see the difference. That I can explain to the 800 users why they're going to be paying more money. And if you remember, on our water bill, we still have our capital improvement project of $1 for the sewer. How much money would we generate if we had a water capital project?
Not very much, but it certainly contributes
Because
to
at one
the
time, we even
overall
had it at
cost.
$2 for the wastewater treatment plant.
So, did I understand, Mel, you correct? You'd like to see the current rate structure at 12%? Bringing, like, other than the initial category, bringing them up to
3316.
The original one?
Because that's
And
what
then,
we're doing.
right, and then 12% across the board. I mean, I can provide several examples, it's not that difficult. We have the current example, and then just a 12% across the board increase.
I'm wanting to get that $8.50 a lot more in line to what the rest of us are paying, and candidly, for the biggest users. So, but I don't even know how many big users we have. So to Teresa's point, if we could, how many customers fit into each of those categories?
Right.
And I also don't want to be a disincentive to businesses where they feel like
Could we have
they're getting the short end of the
some
stick.
neighboring community rates for that as well?
What's that?
Well, he was asking earlier, he wanted to be more in line with,
Well, I mean, Burlington, we pay 150%, 130%, 150% of the Burlington rate, because we don't have our own water generation plant. And then we charge Beaverdale, for example, that same rate. But what we talked about was charging them that 150% at some point down the road, because they're outside of the city limits. But I can,
Talking about Beaverdale, is there a meter out there that we can meter how much water they're using and how much water we're sending?
We've started to charge them, I met 2 meetings back. We told them we were going to charge them for the difference of the lost water.
So what does that do to this rate? Because we're losing a ton of water out
How
there.
much was that, Bill? Do you remember?
Beaverdale was about $10,000. Westwood and Woodsman, offhead, maybe $350 each.
And
That's for an entire year.
that's money we're already paying, or that's water we're already paying for.
What did you say
But,
for an entire year?
Historically, we
The lost consumption.
hadn't been collecting that for
charges
some
for the
reason.
gallon.
The difference between the city's meter and the individual meters.
And
So we
Beaverdale was
started that back up
$10,000.
immediately because it's
And the
their
other two
loss,
were
not
at
ours.
350,
So how many gallons is that? I mean,
About a million gallons.
about 1 million gallons. So that's what the hospital is
So
using.
were you home
Roughly.
during that time, or was it vacation?
That's good.
We would have that much
If somebody's standing
more
with us, it'll
revenue.
go well over that.
About 10,000.
Oh, yeah, May.
So adding that into the factor,
But,
does that take us down to about
we
8%?
often bump over that. This was lower.
How many garden hoses would I need to attach to your faucet to reach my house?
How many years do we get to go back where we didn't collect it?
Did you go over?
Well, just rough thinking,
Not with that one.
that would take us down.
Now that my
It would reduce the amount to 119,000. I guess you could look at it that way, that we'd have to
So
collect.
we can-
Yeah, so
But-
maybe we could
It's Bill.
do those rates.
Staying with us right now.
It's,
We'll bump over.
it's not going to affect it dramatically. As you see, the numbers don't move that much based on your calculations.
We paid $130 a month. So just to give you a point of reference, but never more than that.
We're happy to provide some
Ever.
examples. I just kind of need to know the direction. that
Okay,
you're looking
Andy,
at.
you haven't said anything for a bit.
Yeah, there's a lot to wrap my mind around.
And that's where we're not asking making decisions. I just like to bring back more information, but I don't want to waste more
All right, so
time.
couple different points. Number one, the additional water connections I'm completely for. I think that should happen, and I have no problems with that fee at all. I think that is very warranted. I think there's some issues with some of the math that we were shown, because it doesn't quite line up. So I'd like to have an opportunity to actually work with the numbers a little more as we adjust rates and see it. But I think specifically it was the changes to some of the largest users with this proposed here, and then what we were shown with the 12% increase and stuff. It doesn't line up, because you'd be doubling using this proposed rate of going to 1650, or understanding it would be stair-stepped. And then the increase that was shown on the bottom of that spreadsheet, it doesn't match up with almost doubling their cost.
No, we weren't doubling their costs.
Well, on this second, at least what I have in front of me, shows going to 1650, understanding that stair-stepped, so if you just use 15, and they were paying 10 and 8 currently.
It's the amount over the previous step.
Right, I'm with you. So, yeah, you gotta stair-step it down, but anyway,
Yeah.
in the end, that doesn't matter to the rest of my point.
Right.
So I like the concept of putting more on the person that is using the most water in the most of our facilities. However, I think it does start to price us out of new commercial construction when they look at our water rates versus other cities around us. And I know Johnny asked about looking at other communities, and just pulled up real fast Fort Madison and Mount Pleasant, and they are significantly lower, significantly lower.
They produce their own water.
Yeah, understand.
Right.
And so I think that we can't solve any of that today, but I don't think we should go largely doubling, or 30, 40% theirs, even though I like the concept of it. I think we're going to price ourselves out pretty fast of future business. And then I do think long-term, we need to look at, is this still the best solution for us buying from them? Is there other options? And what is the cost of developing our own? Understanding that would be huge. But if we continue to take 12% rate increases annually, semi-annually, the option may be that we need to do something else. Because this is going to get out of hand real fast.
We'd have to probably, the water that we have access to just thinking from a.
We don't have access to water.
Well,
Well,
you'd have to, if we're gonna drill a well down and then provide, but that water.
Well, and understand part of this may mean just hard conversations with Burlington about this not being sustainable, right? And I know they're seeing rate increases too, so it's not like they're just charging us. They're seeing.
They get free water from the Mississippi.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So I'm just saying, we should have that discussion, because when you look at a Mount Pleasant and you take the low-end user and just quick math on what they have on their website, they're at $24 for that first 3,000 gallons, and we're already at 30. And it gets worse as you go up their chart. Theirs gets better and better and better. So I tend to agree with what Johnny said about we probably do this one 12% across the board, but I was in here arguing last time we did an increase that first user base should not be touched at all. That I think that is the one we should try to leave if we can, if at all possible.
So you're backing away from that, though?
Well, we did, I can't remember the number, is 3 or 4. We did 3 or 4 increases, and at least one of those we held the base the same. And I think every time we do this, we need to look at that and see if that's at all possible.
Leaving it at the 3016, or are you amenable to bringing it back up to the 3316?
Well, I don't agree with the language that it was ever at 3316. That, yeah, did we do that? Yeah. And then went, okay, we got this extra, the COVID funds, and we backed it back down. But that was on an increase, right? We had just increased it. So if we got to remember to that user out there, they saw it go up and then back down.
Yep.
So it steadied for them. So I tend to agree on this one, the 12% across the board. But I also think it's time we start looking at some of our long-term costs, and if there's a way to get this down with a horizon that may be 50 years out. But, and maybe there's other ways we can do this with Burlington that gets that cost down. Understanding that we'll still have to eat increases when they have increases, but maybe we can find a way to save 5% somewhere, which makes a big deal. So I agree, living here, the water is too high.
It's a historic issue that we need to start trimming down where we can, but we still have operations to maintain. And
Absolutely.
Yes, no, I agree with that. And I think we kept, I don't have it on the top of my head, but I think we came in under, obviously.
And the good thing is our lower tax base, our lower tax levy actually offsets some of this. So the cost of living here and living any place next door about evens out because of that, right? I'm paying more on water, but I'm paying less on my home taxes.
Property taxes, yep.
Right, so, but I'd like to make sure we're looking at it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And seeing options, and, yeah, so I'm on for the 12% across the board right now, and the water connections.
Other than the initial user, the 3016, or everybody?
I'm okay this time on that initial user, but probably half the time or more, you're gonna hear me against that.
Okay.
But if I can interact, just, Greg,
Yes.
could you give me the figures on the water loss out at Beaverdale and what that would do if we left that first tier alone and then went 12% across the board? 'Cause I think that'll equal out pretty
you
close.
You wanted us to take it down by $10,000. We'll confirm the
And-
amount, right? About 10,000? We'll check, I'll confirm the amount.
$10,000.
Talking about taking that, adding that $10,000 of revenue in first.
That's an annual number. This is a monthly number.
You're also
Yeah.
relying on like water main breaks, and they're unpredictable, that lost consumption,
But they're paying for that, though.
they did.
But if they don't have main breaks,
Yeah.
that number won't be that high. they actually found a clamp that worked and sealed one, so we may be able to do some repair. I mean, you know.
And our goal with them is to bring them up to speed. HOAs are eligible for SRF funding, 0%, 3 years for planning, design, and construction. That's a nice first step. Can 143 users, 137, 143 users afford the cost of that reconstruction? Do they have to try and supplement that with other funding sources? I mean, does the county assist with their higher borrowing authority, for example, and help spread that cost out? I'd rather ask the county to help participate than put it on our borrowing authority. I mean, but that'd certainly be another discussion, but.
Just, maybe I misunderstood. Is there a meter out there, you're saying they fixed a water line? Now they may not leak as much water.
Right now, they won't leak as much because that one is fixed.
So we have a meter that we can tell that?
Yes, there's meters for each subdivision. We know what the consumption is, and then there's a meter in each house. So we know what's not being paid for from the homeowners. That's been, yeah.
It was 800 and change the prior year. Right now, I believe it was around $1 million, something to that effect.
I see.
I have one last question, and then I'm ready to move on.
Okay.
But, as I was looking at Mount Pleasant and Fort Madison, I noticed their basic service charge. So we're tacking that onto that 0 to 3,000 gallon user, basically, as here's the basic service charge, right? And everybody pays that across the board for that first 3,000 gallons. As I look at both of theirs, their basic service charge depends on the size of the meter going in. So the size of the pipe going in, it's based off of that, which is, I never thought about doing it that way. So I just wondered if you had experience with that, if that's a way we should be looking at. To me, that would then charge a larger service.
I guess I'd have to have, a lot longer discussion with Mike to see what we have for meters out there.
Or Katie can tell you better than me. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot more 5/8 than there is anything else. I mean, there's some 1 inch, and then you got 2 and 3 inch, but.
That's what I have. Mount Pleasant 5/8 is their basic service charge is $13 a month, all the way up to a 10 inch at $405 a month. So I know we can't solve that right here tonight, but the first two I looked up both had those different ways of doing it. So I wondered if that was something we should be looking at.
Andy, does that change your comment on what, like, say, it costs for water in Mount Pleasant? Is it $13 plus $24 for the first 3,000?
I had already done that on that, so no, that was included.
Thank you, okay.
However, I haven't done that math at the high-end user.
Okay, gotcha.
Because theirs are really low. That over 1 million gallon is $3.45.
$3.45.
Right.
So then the residential users are paying extra for, okay.
Right, but then there's that huge service charge on a larger pipe, right? So some of that may even out a little more.
Well, Kathy, I don't want to leave you out. You, it's your turn.
A lot, there's a lot. I agree with the per line charge, I think that's great. I'm seeing a huge difference between like the 13 and the 8, so I would be more of a proposed to like start higher, on the steps. The higher your step is, the highest step is really low. So I wouldn't think I'd want 12 across the board, I would.
Not 12 across the
Yeah.
board, you'd rather put on the lower end user?
I would rather put it on the higher end user.
Well, yes, sorry.
At least put it.
Something to that effect.
Put it more to,
But some increase to the, well, like I plugged in the 3316 here,
yeah.
and then I could reduce those other rates. So we could do 12% across the board, we could do the 3316, and then something less, and 12% across the board. Oh, and the 10% fact, the Beaverdale. Give you an idea. I'm not sure I'd be ready to do the meter at this point in time. I think it'd be better to get something on, and going in on the books and look at the other stuff longer term. So, but, okay. Thank you. Appreciate the input.
Thanks.
Okay, with that then, do we have any old business that we need to take care of? Not. There appears to be no citizens here for inquiries, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.